The subcommittees on emergency preparedness, response and communications, and cybersecurity, infrastructure protection, and security technologies will come to order. The subcommittees are meeting today to receive testimony regarding efforts to enhance preparedness and response capabilities to address cyber threats. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. First, I'd like to thank Chairman Radcliffe and Ranking Member Richmond for working with me and Ranking Member Payne on this issue. Also, I would like to thank all of our witnesses today for coming to join us in this important discussion. We are all aware the cyber threat is real from both state and non-state actors. The countless cyber attacks against the United States and its citizens, including major attacks against Target, Home Depot, OPM, and Anthem, are just the tip of the iceberg. I believe that the number and magnitude of attacks will only increase, especially as more and more of our lives become connected to the Internet. It is imperative that we ensure that our state and local officials, as well as our first responders, are prepared to protect against and respond to a cyber attack. Furthermore, we are seeing an increase in the number of cyber attacks that, if successful, can cause widespread physical damages to a community and require a whole-of-community response. Already, state and non-state actors have attempted to interfere with 911 call centers, sent out inaccurate alerts and warnings, and tried to take over the controls of a dam. While we have taken numerous steps to enhance our capabilities, we have a long way to go in addressing these threats. As a member of Chairman Radcliffe's subcommittee, I have heard about the progress the federal government, states, and localities have made in enhancing our cybersecurity capabilities. But I'm left scratching my head when I see that for the fourth year in a row, the National Preparedness Report released by FEMA indicates that states continue to report cybersecurity as the lowest core capability. What is preventing us from reaching the appropriate level of cybersecurity? What obstacles are states facing, and what can we do to help? I'm especially interested in learning more about what happens after a cyber attack that has physical consequences. Who is in charge of the response, and how are first responders coordinating with cyber officials who are trying to mitigate the attack? I know states like California have set up task force to answer these exact questions. Additionally, in 2012, the national level exercise looked at the nation's ability to respond to a large-scale cyber attack with physical consequences. One of the key recommendations from this exercise was to finalize a cyber response plan that clearly defines the roles and responsibilities of all of the potential response entities. 4 years since that exercise and 6 years since the interim draft of the National Cyber Incident Response Plan was released, we do not have a finalized and approved plan. Developing and finalizing this plan needs to be a priority of the federal government. I understand that the Department plans to finally begin stakeholder engagement on the development of the final plan in the coming weeks. I certainly hope that they will be engaging with all of today's witnesses to get their feedback. Also, I have heard that while sharing cyber information is becoming more prevalent, there is still confusion on who states should talk to when an incident occurs. And the sharing of cyber-related information with the emergency management and first response communities is at best ad hoc. These people are going to be the first on the scene and should have insight into whether the incident they are responding to has been caused by a cyber attack. Can states utilize their fusion centers to be a force multiplier to disseminate critical cyber information? I know that my state is taking this approach, and I'm interested to hear if it has been successful. A few years ago, Secretary Johnson made a statement that I feel is still true today. He said, and I quote, "Cybersecurity is a shared responsibility." And it boils down to this. In cybersecurity, the more systems we secure, the more secure we are. We are all connected online, and a vulnerability in one place can cause a problem in many other places. So everyone needs to work on this. Government officials and business leaders, security professionals, and utility owners and operators, end quote. And that is why we are here today. I want to thank all the witnesses for testifying today. and I look forward to highlighting the good work that you are all doing to enhance your cybersecurity capabilities and learning about what areas are still a challenge and how the federal government can help in mitigating those gaps. The Chair now recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Payne, for an opening statement he may have.
Good morning. I'd like to thank Chairman Donovan and Ratcliffe for holding today's hearings to assess our ability to respond to cyber threats. The last time our subcommittee held a joint hearing on the subject was in the 113th Congress, about 3 years ago. What we have learned is that cyber threats are the new frontier of disaster response. Our legacy response doctrine, from the National Response Framework to the Stafford Act, are rooted in the era that predates reliance on cyber networks and growing threats posed by sophisticated hackers. Despite our best efforts to ensure that our national preparedness doctrine is responsive to evolving threats, it has not kept pace with cyber threats. My district is rich with critical infrastructure, all of which rely on cyber networks. Within 2 miles, we have major transit systems, chemical facilities, and refineries mixed among homes, schools, and hospitals. A hack of any one of these targets could have devastating cascading effects and could risk overwhelming our brave first responders. And we know that the threat is real. Earlier this year, Iranian hackers breached the Bowman Avenue Dam network in Rye, New York. Fortunately, the dam was offline for repair when the authorities discovered this breach. But I am worried that it is only a matter of time before the hackers are successful, and we need to be prepared when they are. I applaud efforts at the state level to confront cyber threats head-on. Some states, like California and my home state of New Jersey, have established state-level cyber information sharing centers modeled after the National Security Communications Integration Centers, or NCIC. I would be interested to learn whether these centers facilitate improved information sharing and encourage better relationships among non-traditional partners who would play an important role in cyber response. At the same time, I'd be remiss if I did not note that while states annually indicate that they lack the confidence in their cybersecurity capabilities in the National Preparedness Report, very few invest Homeland Security grant funding to address the capability gap. I'd be interested in understanding why. Is it because the federal government has not provided adequate guidance on how to address the threat, or whether the amount of grant funds available after cuts to grant programs in the recent years prevents states from investing in cyber capabilities? The witnesses at that hearing made 2 points that stuck with me. First, the witnesses emphasized that the response to cyber attacks will require people from chief information officers to emergency managers to private sector partners to break out of their silos and coordinate with non-traditional partners. Second, they said that the existing disaster response guidance does not adequately address the complexities of responding to cyber events these days. I look forward to hearing our witnesses' opinions on how the National Incident Management System, the National Response Framework, and other disaster management doctrine should be updated to reflect the unique qualities of a cyber event. I appreciate the witnesses for being here today, and I look forward to their testimony. With that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes the chairman of the Subcommittee on Cybersecurity, Infrastructure Protection, and Security Technologies, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Radcliffe, for an opening statement he may have.
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank Chairman Donovan, Ranking Member Payne, for working with me and with Ranking Member Richmond on putting this issue together today. I also want to thank the witnesses for being here today. I'm looking forward to hearing your testimony. On the Cybersecurity Subcommittee, we talk a lot about the variety and high number of growing cyber threats that are out there. But today we're going to hear about the other part of the equation, which includes the people, the hours, the programs designed and dedicated to preparing for and responding to the dangers that these cyber threats pose. Hopefully, having this discussion at a national level will help bring to light some of the best practices and most evident areas for improvement at every level of government, whether it be the federal, state, or local level. Because the truth is, every level of government is constantly having to face and respond to these threats. So we all need to be working together to understand the tactics and techniques and procedures that hackers are using so that we're better equipped to face the threats of tomorrow. It's important that we spend as much time and energy thinking about the solutions that secure Americans as we do examining the dangers. The purpose of today's hearing is to focus on seeking those solutions to make Americans safer. In that spirit, we're constantly seeking to improve upon and expand the programs and partnerships in both the private sector and state and local governments that function to help keep Americans safe. These partnerships are the nuts and bolts to secure Americans against the havoc that is possible if a bad actor were to successfully disrupt or damage one of the many systems that we rely upon for everyday life, like our water and our power. What we're hoping to gain from today's hearing is what more we can be doing to further these partnerships and programs. The importance of the flow of information can't be stressed enough, as information is the currency with which security and insecurity is established in today's digital age. As fast as the bad actors are moving in cyberspace, we have to be constantly moving faster to stay ahead of them, and right now we're not. While they have to only be right one time to cause damage, we have to always be resilient and stand perpetually ready with a plan and with answers. I'm glad to be having this joint hearing to highlight the interconnectedness of the response plans that are in place in case of a devastating cyber event and the first responders who carry them out. At the federal level, we have the ability to push out and develop plans beyond the capability currently available to the 50 states. But it is the responders already in those areas who will be the first people that those most directly affected will see if a catastrophic cyber attack occurs. As Chairman Donovan mentioned, the draft National Incident Response Plan, or NCHIRP, was delivered to the White House in the fall of 2009, and in March of 2010, an interim draft was released, but not approved, subject to ongoing review by the administration. It's now been 6 years since the release of the interim draft, with stakeholder engagement just now starting. 6 years is entirely too long for any type of response plan to sit on a shelf in the White House, but it's especially dangerous in the case of cyber. In 2014, Congress passed a law to require this cyber incident response plan to be finalized. Clearly, the administration, by not finalizing this plan, doesn't seem to be taking cyber incident response planning seriously. It begs the very obvious questions. What if there is a significant cyber attack in the United States? Does every level of government know their role and how cyber response will be coordinated? We are neither too ignorant nor too proud to think that a major cyber event is outside the realm of possibility right now. So I would like to take this moment to convey that we're watching the development of this document very closely. Look, it's very apparent that we have a lot more work to do. Securing our states from cyber threats now includes entirely new roles and responsibilities that didn't exist 50 years ago. Discussing, examining, and encouraging the programs and partnerships that Americans rely upon is absolutely critical to being able to preserve and guarantee the American way of life. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today to learn what more we can and what we should be doing to advance the security of the American people. Thank you. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Payne.
Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to submit the gentleman from Louisiana, the ranking member, Mr. Richmond's statement into the record.
Without objection, so ordered. Other members of the subcommittees are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. We are pleased to have a distinguished panel before us today on this important topic. Mark Gillarucci serves as the Director of the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, a position he has held since July 1st, 2013. As a member of the Cabinet, Director Gillarucci serves as the Governor's Homeland Security Advisor and oversees statewide public safety, emergency management, emergency communications, counterterrorism efforts, and the state threat assessment system. Mr. Gillarucci previously served as the Secretary of the California Emergency Management Agency. Welcome, sir. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel J. Cooney currently serves in the Office of Counterterrorism of the New York State Police. He serves as advisor to the Director of the New York State Office of Homeland Security and oversees the staff of the New York State Intelligence Center, New York's Fusion Center. He has been a New York State police officer for 23 years and has been awarded a master's degree in security studies from the Naval Postgraduate School. Welcome, Colonel. Brigadier General Stephen J. Spano is President and Chief Information Officer of the Center for Internet Security. Most recently, he served as the General Manager for Defense and National Security for Amazon Web Services Worldwide Public Sector. Prior to Amazon Web Services, General Spano served over 28 years in the United States Air Force in a variety of leadership roles. He retired in 2011 from Air Force Combat Command, where he served as the Director of Communications. Welcome, General, and thank you for your service to our country. Mr. Mark Raymond began serving as the Chief Information Officer for the State of Connecticut Department of Administrative Services, Bureau of Enterprise Systems and Technology on June 2nd, 2011. He has over 2 decades of technology and business experience consulting in New York, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. That includes working in the areas of finance, payroll, human services, budgeting, procurement, human services, revenue, and transportation. As a consultant, he has worked with federal agencies including the United States Treasury, Federal Highway Administration, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and the U.S. Department of Transportation. Welcome, sir. Mr. Robert Galvin serves as the Chief Technology Officer for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, a position he has held since December 2013. In this capability, he provides oversight, direction, and management for all of the agency's technology, information systems, and technology service delivery. Prior to joining the Port Authority, Mr. Galvin served as the Chief Technology Officer at the New York City School Construction Authority. The witnesses' full written statements will appear in the record. The Chair now recognizes Mr. Gillarucci for 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, good morning, Chairman and distinguished members of the subcommittee. Mark Gillarucci, and as I'm the Director of OES in California, I'm here today on behalf of the National Emergency Management Association, which represents state emergency management directors of the 50 states, territories, and the District of Columbia. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you today to discuss concerns related to the consequences of a cyber attack and the role of emergency management community in responding to this unique and evolving threat. As our lives, our systems, our critical infrastructure, as well as our emergency management coordination and communication platforms become more and more integrated with and dependent upon the Internet of Things, so does the proliferation of threats and complexities from cyber attacks, and of course, the need to continue to evolve capabilities and countermeasures. These emerging threats, ushered in by advancements in technology, are a challenge for emergency management at a time when the adversary is unpredictable, asymmetrical, and very active. The range of threat actors, the methods of attack, targeted systems, and victims are ever expanding. And because information systems are now the backbone of critical infrastructure in the United States, We are at an age of transitioning into next-generation public safety due to its significance to national and economic security. Of concern to the emergency management community is the threat and potential cascading impacts of a cyber attack to our critical infrastructure systems, lifelines, and assets, whether physical or virtual, by actors with malicious intent to exploit vulnerabilities, disrupt or destroy control systems, or incapacitate the delivery of essential services, all which places the security and safety of our communities, our citizens, and the economy at great jeopardy. Like the consequences of other asymmetrical terrorist threats, consequence management of cyber attacks is challenging due to its unpredictable and ubiquitous nature. It requires a concerted and coordinated effort of collaborative planning, risk identification and management, communications, information sharing, interdiction, response, and mitigation. As information technology becomes increasingly integrated with physical infrastructure operations, emergency management must plan and prepare for the increased risk for large-scale or high-impact events and the cascading impacts that could harm or disrupt services or worse, cause fatalities or destruction in our communities. Widespread and long-term power outages, loss of water telecommunication systems, disruption of public health or public safety systems, destruction of control systems, interruption of food production and distribution, and or the movement of commodities or people are just a few potential consequences of a successful cyber attack on our critical infrastructure. All consequences emergency management must consider, plan, and prepare for. There is no doubt that the potential aftermath of a significant cyber attack resulting in physical consequences will challenge existing hierarchies, dependencies, reporting structures, and planning assumptions. Emergency managers will need to leverage all necessary local, state, and private sector resources, implement redundant capabilities for continuity of operations and possibly continuity of government, and will require federal support for both technical and Stafford Act assistance. But it remains unclear today how the consequences of an attack will be defined and meet requirements for Stafford Act assistance. Another challenge facing state emergency management and Homeland Security organizations is the ability to effectively manage cyber risk, as it is not possible to eliminate it. Like many other hazards, both natural and human caused, state leaders must build cybersecurity systems, communication and information capabilities, and procedures designed to not only preempt attacks through adequate cyber defense systems, but enable organizations to withstand attacks when they succeed, or in other words, to build cyber resilience. A logical approach to cybersecurity preparedness and incident response begins at all levels of government and in partnership with the private sector. As the federal government continues to build its capabilities, policies, and strategies, it has left states to build cybersecurity capacities with limited resources, trained personnel, and guidance or a specific blueprint to follow, all while facing threat actors who are advanced, nimble, quick to adapt, and overcome defenses and intending to do harm to private citizens and government services. Dedicated cybersecurity grants for planning and operational capabilities, developing training, and supporting the blueprint of a workforce of cyber warriors, as well as identified post-event remediation funding streams that do not currently exist, but are absolutely necessary to ensure states are prepared to adequately build cyber capabilities and defenses. This needs to be a priority. For example, in California, one key cybersecurity capability we recently stood up is the California Cybersecurity Integration Center as a way to measure our whole of government and public-private sector integration approach. The CalSIC, as it's called, integrates critical cybersecurity functions directly impacting my ability to manage both the Homeland Security and emergency management portfolios in California. It is co-located with the California State Threat Assessment Center, our state's primary fusion center, which maximizes information sharing and allows for communications to be properly vetted and classified, ensuring conductivity and information sharing between the intelligence community, law enforcement, and California's other 5 regional fusion centers, and it expands upon our current capabilities focused specifically on protecting California. It resides within our Homeland Security Division, aligned with DHS's organizational structure, and integrates both the academic and private sectors. It provides a statewide nexus for cyber threat information sharing for the state of California, our critical infrastructure sector partners, and provides that provide essential services, our 911 system, the intelligence community, and law enforcement. It promotes proactive situational awareness of the cyber threat, cyber hygiene, and best cybersecurity practices, and it augments the State Emergency Operations Center during activations for emergency incidents through systems analysis and resilient communication. And most importantly, it provides support to our state's Emergency Support Function 18, the component of the state emergency plan that focuses on the impacts and countermeasures related to a major cyber attack. A key element for success of this capability, but nonetheless a challenge we are working with, is establishing a blueprint for integrating disparate agency sector efforts and mission sets into a unified, coordinated, and streamlined operation that reflects the full intelligence cycle from collection, analysis, to dissemination that supports situational awareness and the complete emergency management cycle. The CalSIC design forces collaboration between all of the major state agencies and sector representatives that have a role in cybersecurity through protocols and the integration of respective cybersecurity staff. This partnership forces down the silos and stovepipes and generates a level of collaboration on the cyber front not seen before in our state government, which helps to define the roles and responsibilities of each organization during cyber events at a statewide significance. As well, through partnerships with the National Cybersecurity Communications Integration Center and the Multi-State Information Sharing Analysis Center, the CalSIC addresses prevention, protection, response, and recovery while providing detail on cyber threats and trends specifically to California. The CalSIC can use this analysis to notify residents of current threats and how to prevent and mitigate those threats. The consolidation of national, state, and local cyber threat data will provide a more strategic picture benefiting prevention and response. And to further our resiliency platform, we are also moving to implement the DHS NCCIC cyber hygiene campaign across California's state agencies and departments. In closing, collaboration, coordination, training, planning, clear protocols, real-time information sharing, and processing of indicators of attack are essential elements of a robust cybersecurity and emergency management posture for all governments. Linking up critical infrastructure assessors and analysts with cybersecurity personnel and emergency planners also needs to be approached holistically and sustainably. At all levels, government must be prepared to deal with an ever-changing and increasingly complex set of challenges that test our traditional approaches to emergency preparedness and response to disasters. Changing demographics, emerging technologies, and the interdependencies of our infrastructure and systems create vulnerabilities that differ from those of the past. The cyber threats facing our nation are not subsiding, but in fact are evolving in such a way that these threats demand purposeful, proactive action, adequate funding support, and a more forward-thinking and collaborative approach at all government levels and critical infrastructure sectors. This has to be one team, one fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garlucci. The chair now recognizes Lieutenant Colonel Cooney for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Donovan, Ranking Member Payne, Chairman Ratcliffe, and members of the subcommittees. Thank you for inviting me to testify today. My name is Dan Cooney. I'm a Lieutenant Colonel with the New York State Police responsible for overseeing the New York State Intelligence Center, or NYSIC, the state's designated fusion center, which is staffed by approximately 90 individuals drawn from nearly 20 law enforcement and Homeland Security agencies at the local, state, and federal levels. Since we opened our doors in 2003 as one of the nation's first fusion centers, NYSIC has maintained an all-crimes approach with the ultimate goal of preventing criminal and terrorist activity in our state and supporting our partners' ongoing law enforcement investigations. The New York State Police has long had a computer crimes unit. NYSIC incorporated cyber threat intelligence into its mission in 2014 by creating a cyber analysis unit when the NYSIC had just moved to co-locate with the Center for Internet Security and the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center. Our approach is based on partnerships, intelligence production, and outreach. To further our outreach, NYSIC spearheaded creation of the New York State Cyber Partners Working Group, which meets monthly and is comprised of state and federal government law enforcement, Homeland Security, and information technology personnel, and the National Guard. As the Intelligence Center, our role is to take the lead in developing cyber intelligence products for both the technical and non-technical audiences, and we leverage the partnerships formed through this group to accomplish this mission. The NICIC also relies on national cyber information sharing networks. Routinely, we access the National Fusion Center Association's Cyber Intelligence Network, through which over 250 federal, state, and local law enforcement members act as a virtual fusion center, utilizing a cloud service provided by the Homeland Security Information Network to share cyber threat intelligence in real time at the for official use only, or FOUO level. Within the state, our distribution lists are separated by sector and between technical and non-technical audiences to ensure recipients receive exactly the information they need. Actionable intelligence for IT staff so they can deploy appropriate prevention or mitigation controls, and more strategic information on trends in cyber actors' tactics, techniques, and procedures for executives and policymakers to better inform policy decisions and resource allocation. NICIC's Intelligence Liaison Officer Network maintains points of contact in fire, EMS, and emergency management agencies in each county with whom we engage in two-way threat information sharing. Additionally, nearly all of the 500-plus law enforcement agencies in New York State have a designated field intelligence officer that regularly communicates with the NICIC. More technical products are shared directly with county chief information security officers. At both the Fusion Center and across state agencies, New York State is sharing more information more effectively than ever before. Despite a constantly changing environment, we have made excellent progress, but I want to highlight two specific areas for continued growth from the full statement I submitted on the record. First, the information sharing lessons of the last 13 years in the counterterrorism space must be applied to cybersecurity today. At the state level, the Fusion Center is DHS's single point of contact for terrorism-related information, and we know from where within DHS this information is coming. This is not yet the case with cyber threat information, and more often than not, the Fusion Centers do not receive cybersecurity intelligence information in a timely manner. The more of this information that Fusion Centers receive, the more we can share with agencies and businesses within our state, allowing us to close the current intelligence gaps and push information to smaller entities that direct federal sharing currently does not reach. Second, we observe a large amount of cyber threat information is classified. While Fusion Centers have the capability to receive classified documents, we cannot share useful contents with many of our customers unless the classification is downgraded. On behalf of New York's Fusion Center and as part of the larger national network of Fusion Centers, thank you for this opportunity to speak before your subcommittees, and I welcome any questions.
Mr. Chairman, ranking members, members of the committee, I'm Steve Spano, the President and Chief Operating Officer for the Center for Internet Security, or CIS. I appreciate the opportunity to share our thoughts on the state of national cybersecurity and offer a number of suggestions and address some of the challenges that lie ahead. I'd like to talk a little bit about our organization, what we do, our primary mission, and how that feeds into our assessment of the current state of cybersecurity in the area that we know best, which is state, local, tribal, and territorial governments. Then I'll talk a little bit about how we service and are enhancing that mission, working with our partners like the Fusion Center and state and local governments, and then offer some ideas moving forward strategically that perhaps this committee can begin to address as the challenges we face continue to grow. About CIS, it began in 2000 out of a passion and a belief that everybody deserves a secure online experience. The 100+ professionals work collaboratively to enhance the cybersecurity mission, readiness, and response. And we do that in 3 core areas. Beginning from the foundation, we believe that it's inherently practical and important to establish a secure framework to build your cyber strategy on and evolving to. We call that security framework the critical security controls, or the CIS controls. They are a set of prioritized actions that organizations of any size can take in a priority order to deal with the current threats that exist in today's environment. That security framework serves as a foundation for some of the products and services that we offer. One such being the security benchmarks, which are automated configurations that lock down devices, operating systems, and software. So these security benchmarks help execute and implement the CIS controls, along with many of the services and products that our partners out in industry also support and provide. The controls, the benchmarks, the products and services are put into execution in our primary mission, and that is running the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, or the MSISAC. The ISAC was established in a partnership with DHS in 2010, and we began the journey of beginning to monitor all 56 SLTTs, where we are approximately more than 2/3 of the way through bringing the states and these local governments and tribal networks onto our network. We currently have 41 that we actively monitor, that we provide network intrusions, that we provide intelligence analysis to, that we provide forensics capability and response as part of a computer emergency response team. That mission continues to grow and strengthen. What I'd like to talk about now is how that mission feeds our assessment of where we believe the current state of national cybersecurity is within the SLTTs. We inform it through the day-to-day mission and the operation over the last several years, our experience and global situational awareness and engagement. We are also responsible for producing the National Cybersecurity Report to DHS, which every 2 years is provided to Congress. We are working to finalize this year's report. The NCSR is a self-assessment by the states in 13 key categories. And we measure those categories in a number of ways through the self-assessment amongst these entities. And we find that in each of the 13 categories, while year to year there's been improvements among the states, there's still challenges that reside in all 13 categories to meet the self-prescribed benchmarks, metrics that they want to achieve. Progress is being made. I characterize in my written testimony that the current state within the SLTTs is improving, but there are still a number of challenges that are facing the states, to include under-resourced budgets, a workforce that I would characterize as high demand, low density in its assets, and that's insufficient to address many of the challenges, and a number of other areas of dealing with basic hygiene in terms of executing some of their strategies. But progress is being made, and I would characterize it as improving. I look forward to the dialogue and the questions, and to diving into some of the specific details on how we can improve moving forward in 2 key areas. One is establishing a basic hygiene campaign, whether that's built upon the critical security controls or other frameworks. And the other area, as I mentioned, that I believe is a strategic challenge for us nationally is how to inspire and generate a cybersecurity workforce that can grow and meet the challenges, because as I mentioned, they are a high demand, low density asset across, and the trends we're seeing within K through 12 and interest in STEM, colleges and universities are offering programs, but it's insufficient to get to scale. And we're seeing that just the basic capabilities to keep up with the growing threats and the expertise and the training of existing professionals is a challenge for a lot of the SLTTs. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General Spano. The chair now recognizes Mr. Raymond for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Donovan, Chairman Ratcliffe, and Ranking Members Payne and Richmond for inviting me to testify for you today. My name is Mark Raymond, and I serve as the Chief Information Officer for the state of Connecticut and the Vice President of the National Association of State Chief Information Officers. NASCIO is a nonprofit association that represents state CIOs and IT executives and managers from states, territories, and DC. Today, I'd like to provide the committee with an overview of cybersecurity preparedness in the states, what states are doing to improve our resilience, and opportunities to enhance the security profile of our nation. State CIOs are executive branch officials who serve as business leaders and advisors of IT policy and implementation at the state level. The most critical role for the CIO today includes the security of state networks, protection of state data, and helping formulate the response for cyber incident or disruption. These responsibilities are shared with the Chief Information Security Officer, or CISO, a position that exists among all 50 states and for whom are becoming increasingly standardized in their roles. State CIOs and CISOs operate in an increasingly challenging environment. In the 2014 Deloitte NASCIO cybersecurity study, we found that the top barriers for states addressing cybersecurity were insufficient budgets, increased sophistication of threats, and the inadequate availability of security professionals. Regarding insufficient funding, the majority of the states spend in the range of 1% to 2% of their overall IT budget on cybersecurity. The federal government spends around 14 to 16%. Combined with recent events, this disparity shows that there's no one correct amount or percentage. States must assess their cybersecurity risk and spend commensurate with that risk. The lack of qualified IT security professionals are also a challenge for states. People with IT security skills are the most difficult to recruit and retain for states, and the state government salary rates and pay structures are the biggest challenge in bringing on IT talent. Another obstacle for CIOs and CISOs is the increasing sophistication of threats. The top three are malicious code, hacktivism, and zero-day attacks. State CIOs are playing defense, but we've been able to better prepare for known threats through information sharing. Despite these challenges, states are progressing towards a more secure cyber environment. NASCIO has long called for states to adopt a cybersecurity framework and quickly endorsed the NIST framework upon its release. From 2015 data, we know that 80% of the states have adopted a cybersecurity framework based on national standards and guidelines. States are utilizing public and private resources to enhance their cybersecurity posture in both times of relative rest and in times of emergency. To better identify and detect cyber threats, states are increasingly sharing threat information through fusion centers and MSISAC. 80% of states have established trusted partnerships for information sharing and response. 80% of states have also acquired and implemented continuous vulnerability monitoring capabilities to better identify and detect malicious cyber activity. Many states also participate in Albert, a joint program between MSISAC and DHS, which brings an Einstein-based cyber traffic monitoring system to the states. Knowing that the ability to identify and detect is our first line of defense, Connecticut is the first state to take advantage of DHS's threat intelligence offering provided by eyesight partners. In the realm of response and recovery, states are also showing maturity. In a disaster, state officials expect the state CIO to maintain reliable and secure infrastructure, coordinate with other state officials, and restore communication services. I am responsible for these duties in my state as outlined in our disaster response framework. Recognizing that states could face a catastrophic disaster that coincides with or is caused by a cyber event, NASCIO has called on states to develop a cyber disruption plan that contemplates massive disruptions to the business of state government. States like Michigan have taken the whole community approach and have developed disruption plans that outline roles and responsibilities during a disaster. A key partner to the states has been DHS. States are heavy utilizers of DHS state and local cyber programs like ICS CERT and FedVTE. Also, federal programs like CyberCorps help shore the IT security workforce gap that all states are facing. Another way the federal government could aid in enhancing states' ability to identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover is by harmonizing federal security requirements. CIOs must comply with IRS Publication 1075, FBI CJIS, HIPAA, FERPA, CMS's MARS-E, amongst others. Regulation harmonization could lessen the burden on states, enabling us to focus on providing security services rather than checking off boxes. Thank you for holding this important hearing and for the opportunity to testify today on this truly critical issue.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond. The chair now recognizes Mr. Galvin for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Radcliffe, Chairman Donovan, Ranking Member Payne, and members of the subcommittees. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss strategies for strengthening our nation's cybersecurity. Since the December of 2013, it has been my privilege to serve the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey as its Chief Technology Officer. The Port Authority builds, operates, and maintains infrastructure critical to New York and New Jersey transportation and regional trade. These facilities include America's busiest airport system, including JFK, LaGuardia, and Newark Liberty International Airports, the World Trade Center, the PATH Rail Transit System, 6 tunnels and bridges between New York and New Jersey, the Port Authority Bus Terminal, Hudson River Ferries, and marine terminals. For more than 90 years, the Port Authority has worked to improve the quality of life for more than 18 million people who live, work, and visit New York and New Jersey metropolitan region. Safety is the #1 priority across all of the authority's locations. Technology touches virtually all of our operations, so the secure and reliable functioning of our computing assets is vital to public safety. In our limited time, I'd like to briefly discuss 3 areas in which I believe the federal government can assist technology professionals in addressing cyber threats. These areas are communication, readiness, and public education. In the realm of communication, events like today's public hearing play a valuable role. Government and technology leaders need to work together to create safe forums to discuss prevention strategies and deconstruct cybersecurity incidents. Through the avenues of improved communication, best practices can be shared across many organizations to the benefit of the whole. Turning now to readiness. When I joined the Port Authority, the organization was in the planning stages of designing a comprehensive cybersecurity program. We adopted a framework, the NIST 800-53, which was developed by a joint task force of people from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, DoD, Department of Homeland Security, Intelligence Community, and Committee on National Security Systems. This was an invaluable tool, saving us time and money as we put our cybersecurity program in place. I believe the federal government has a similar opportunity to assist organizations by coordinating regular drills, simulating large-scale cybersecurity events. Facilitating these exercises would allow those involved to understand whether they have the right procedures in place to respond effectively and to identify any deficiencies. At the Port Authority, our Office of Emergency Management conducts regular readiness drills simulating such things as active shooter scenarios and aircraft emergencies. From these exercises, teams learn how to improve their response. Cybersecurity professionals can benefit from the same rigorous testing of our readiness. Like many organizations, the Port Authority invests resources to detect, prioritize, and examine suspicious activity on our computer networks. We also use strong, complex passwords across all mission-critical systems, restrict administrator access to only essential personnel, and staff a 24/7 operations center to respond to alarms generated by our cybersecurity tools and alerts received from other agencies. But probably the single most important thing we do to improve our cybersecurity posture is to require all staff who access Port Authority computers to participate in mandatory cybersecurity training programs. Themes such as think before you click on email links and be aware before you share on social media encourage people to contact our help desks and the Operations Center before they open questionable links and attachments. Education is essential. I believe the federal government can play a significant role in strengthening America's cybersecurity by sponsoring a national public education campaign to promote safe computing practices. In my experience, people are more likely to exercise good cyber hygiene if they understand the important role their individual actions play in keeping our computer networks secure. In the physical world, we rely on the American public to see something and say something. We need to develop nationwide awareness and training programs to empower people to do the same in the realm of cybersecurity. I thank the committee and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Galvin. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for questions. Since each of us only has 5 minutes, I'd like to give each of you an opportunity to answer. I think I'd like to just ask the entire panel just one question and ask each of you to spend a minute on a response. States have constantly ranked their cyber capabilities the lowest among their core capabilities, and it makes sense that states would look towards the federal government for assistance. Each of you, in 1 minute, could you tell me, and some of you hit on it, declassification of information, training as we do it, active shooter demonstrations we should do with cyber attacks. Could each of you just tell me what you think the #1 priority of the federal government should be for each of the states to help them in securing their cyber terrorist capabilities?
Mark Ilarducci, really two areas. One, information sharing is really critical here so that we're all on the same page with regards to the threat streams, and funding, dedicated funding to implement that collective footprint or blueprint as we move forward, working together to minimize the threat. There is no dedicated funding for cybersecurity. It needs to be raised on the priority scale.
Lieutenant Colonel?
In the post-9/11 environment, there was a tremendous amount of effort and time put together to create a structure and a network for counterterrorism. And that is, the national network of fusion centers. I compare the cyber environment now to that environment then, where, we should leverage this structure that took so long to build to share this cyber threat information. And I think, as I mentioned in my testimony, I think that's something that's there. We just need to take it a little further. And I think that if I had to name one thing, that would be my one topic.
Thank you, sir. General?
Yeah, I would probably say the workforce is probably the biggest challenge and where the federal government can help. And in that area, the states are really struggling both to compete with industry, and so when they do hire cyber professionals, because again they are in such demand, it's hard to compete with industry who also is requiring and demanding and hiring of those cyber professionals. So looking at the catalyst of how to start in K through 12 to get more interest in STEM, to look at the scholarship for service and how perhaps we can broaden that into other areas of not-for-profits and other businesses that surround critical security controls and critical infrastructures would be a clear role for the federal government to sort of serve as a catalyst. I would say very closely to that would be tightening the command and control and the apparatuses that link the state governments through the fusion centers, through the ISAC, to continue to strengthen the situational awareness that we present from the ISAC to DHS, which informs many national and international threats and actions, and fusing that together and presenting it for national action. So they would be my two areas.
General, I suspect that one of your frustrations is that all of you train people who will then eventually go on to industry. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Raymond.
Thank you. Two areas. One is, I think, continuing to raise the recognition of cyber risks as equally as critical as physical infrastructure risks to our critical infrastructure. I think the second is to leverage a broader leveraging of funding that is available to the states for a variety of different directed programs, that if we could leverage that more broadly to address the cyber risk across the state, that would be tremendously beneficial to the states.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Galvin?
To Chairman, thank you. So I outlined 3 in my opening remarks. If I had to narrow it down to, I could narrow it down to 2, which I think is in the area of readiness. And I talked a little bit about coordinating cybersecurity simulation incidents. And my intent there is really not so much to exercise the cybersecurity plans of each organization or agency, but to look at the coordination between agencies and organizations. For example, the Port Authority relies heavily on Customs and Border Protection and the FAA, but there is no one organization that's responsible for overseeing a coordinated response to a coordinated attack, which is a very high concern for me. and the other I talked about is public education. So as a technology practitioner professional who's been working in the technical areas for 30 years, frankly, I don't know how most normal individuals who have training in other areas deal with the onslaught of technology that comes at them every day. We've all been trained as technology professionals in information access and security and control mechanisms and so on and so forth. Today, people buy Wi-Fi devices, they come home, they set them up, they buy televisions that interconnect with their Wi-Fi networks and their cable systems, and there are protections that you can use and leverage, but without some kind of a training plan, I don't know how people deal with it. I assume that what happens is most of them, if they don't have someone in their life that works in the technology sphere to come and help them set up, I think they take it out of the box, they plug it in, and if it works, they declare victory, and they leave it until it breaks and they buy another one. So I think public education has a huge role in protecting individuals' information as well as the information at risk in organizations, because what we're seeing is social media being leveraged by people who are posing a threat in order to gain access to corporate and agency systems.
Thank you, sir. I thank you all for your testimony and sharing your expertise with us. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Payne, for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just on Mr. Galvin's last question, I resemble some of those remarks. I was the relative back in the 80s that hooked everyone's VCR up. So I went around to all my aunts and uncles, and that was my job for a while. So I understand what you're saying in terms of that. And I'll stay with you, Mr. Galvin. You know, like California, we in New Jersey have established a state cybersecurity and communications integration cell with the goal of bringing together diverse stakeholders, promote statewide awareness and local cyber threats, and widespread adoption of cybersecurity best practices. In your opinion, is the New Jersey Cybersecurity Cell carrying out its mission effectively? And what does it doing well, and what should it be doing better?
Great, thank you. One thing I want to make clear is that, you know, the work of securing our information assets and ensuring the reliable function of our systems is performed by in my organization, a hardworking staff of technology and security professionals, and also in our partners' agencies. And I'm truly fortunate to work with such a talented and dedicated set of public servants. And I assume that other members of the panel have a similar experience. This is a team effort. You know, we recognized early on putting our cybersecurity program together that there was no one group or individual that was going to have the total solution. So we've developed strong partnerships with New Jersey CISC, New York SIG, New Jersey State Police, New York NYPD, FBI, DHS, the MS-ISAC, US CERT, and ICS CERT. And we continue to engage with those agencies to perform vulnerability assessments and to assist with incident response. And likewise, we also, in this process of putting our cybersecurity program together, strengthened internal partnerships between the Chief Security Office, which at the Port Authority is responsible for the public, the PIPD, the Office of Emergency Management, the Office of Inspector General, and the technology departments. So it's definitely a coordinated team approach that I think you said it very well, Mr. Ghirlandaci, that it's a team solution.
And so you feel that you're breaking through the silos of these different entities and working together to better assess these threats?
We do, and we spent time, I assume this will probably be a question, breaking down the NIST 853 framework, and we did a RACI diagram, responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed, to identify who was in the lead for each of the different tasks. And that was it was a very lengthy exercise, but it was extremely valuable to us in helping put our plan together.
Thank you. And Mr. Ghirlandaci, every year the National Preparedness Report reveals that of the 32 core capabilities, states are least confident in cybersecurity. At the same time, states invest very little of their Homeland Security grant funds into improving that cybersecurity capability. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that part of it is because really the emphasis from DHS to states, to the state administrative agents or to the HSAs that are doing the investment justifications are not necessarily clear, and the whole concern about cyber, as been stated here, really isn't fully yet understood. This is an evolving threat. It's getting more complex. It's getting worse as the days go on. And I think that we, as DHS and the states, really, we need to catch up with the fact that this threat is not going away. And so once the DHS and of course, Congress allocate funding specifically targeted towards the cyber threat, I think that you'll start to see states start to implement more of that capability. Now, I would say that just this year, I, as the SSA, went into our investment justification and broadened the investment justification to include cybersecurity and countering violent extremism to be able to push down to local grant recipients at other state agencies and local governments so that they could utilize what funds they do have and repurpose those funds. But as you know, funds are pretty limited as they are, and it's hard to sort of move one thing to start working on the other. So it's a constant prioritization and reprioritization issue.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I'll yield back.
The gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Radcliffe, for question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Earlier, well, I guess at the end of last year, we passed an information sharing bill in this Congress aimed at improving our ability to timely share cyber threat indicators. I want to start with you, General Spano. How would you characterize the quality of the information flow that the MS-ISAC has with the NKIC?
I would say that the quality, I believe, is representative and testified by FBI and other DHS of information that we provided from monitoring state networks is very high quality, and it's fused. We have representatives from the MS-ISAC that sit on the NKIC floor as liaisons, so they're very integrated into that mission.
Is that how you give feedback in terms of what information you're getting that's valuable?
The feedback of what we provide comes from our analysis within the MS-ISAC from our monitoring mission. So, for instance, in 2015, we analyzed 3 trillion records and provided 56,000 alerts, sifting through all of those that were actionable for the states, but we also fed into the NKIC for further analysis and fusing with other sources of intelligence. We've supported FBI investigations with some of our analysis of what we've seen at the state level. And so the conduit and the function and the command and control has been working extremely well based upon the maturity of the ISAC mission and its capabilities year over year.
Okay. So I'm pleased to hear that that the sharing is going extremely well. Can you offer, or would you offer anything to improve the efficiency or effectiveness?
Again, what we provide is, I think, moving up in its intelligence. The processes are lean and getting better as we continue to strengthen that relationship. I think the challenges, I think, are more downward into the state levels, as I talked about with respect to some of the resources.
Yeah, so you talked about the workforce being a challenge.
Right.
I think you characterized it as high demand, low density. So what can DHS do? What can DHS do to create a workforce that's well-trained and fully equipped to respond to cyber threats?
I don't know that it's any one responsibility of any single agency. I believe it's a collaborative effort at all levels, public, private, facilitated and encouraged by DHS. They have a number of programs that the ISAC implements to try to encourage younger students. We do a poster contest, and the CIS offers some summer camps to try to encourage it. There's a scholarship for service under the National Science Foundation, which is really important. We believe that looking at that and examining whether we can continue to do that, it's not any silver bullet that is going to solve this problem. It's a generational problem where if the pipeline at the K through 12 is not satisfying the growing demand, you're sort of always chasing. And looking at it from a comprehensive perspective of how to ignite, that STEM capability at all levels, and then balancing, the differences between the public and private partnerships, I think will help create a stopgap with programs that are specific to workforce exercises, joint exercises to raise awareness.
Great, thank you. Let me turn to you, Mr. Raymond. Last month, I held a field hearing in my district where I got perspectives from fire chiefs and local law enforcement officials on how they're responding to cyber incidents. I want your perspective from the state, the NASIO perspective. What's the greatest limitation out there right now for states in terms of defending their cyber networks? And is NASIO, in, I guess part two of that is NASIO, are there shared best practices that NASIO is using to coordinate between state CIOs and local first responders and law enforcement?
Thank you for that question. I'd say that the biggest challenge is the velocity of the threat and the changing threat. And so, continued improvement on providing information and actionable information as efficiently as it can be provided, almost to a machine-to-machine level to allow us to react, will continue to allow the states to be able to defend as best we can. And it does help with the workforce issue in many ways where we can have our machines responding on our behalf. In terms of working out with the field, NASIO has put out over 31 different publications that are responsible or intending to work with both the education aspects, so making sure that our leaders understand how important cyber is, all the way to practitioners. So we have over a 100-page cyber guide in a set of information for state information security officers on best practices that we've assembled across the states to help them as they're new to these roles, and we do have turnover, that they can pick that up quickly and understand the very diverse environment that we have across all states.
Terrific. Thanks very much. I appreciate y'all being here today and your testimony, and my time's expired, so I'll yield back. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank our panel here today. Your testimony was excellent, and appreciate your work that you're doing in this field. Let me start, if I could, with Mr. Raymond and Mr. Galvin. Let's say that the state of Connecticut or the Port Authority has experienced what you, Mr. Raymond, in your testimony term a cyber disruption event. Whom do you call first?
For Connecticut, we actually have a cyber working group. So the Homeland Security Advisor, Deputy Commissioner Bill Shea, and I work closely with this. Our first call is to the Fusion Center and then to MS-ISAC in terms of coordinating our events. Then we pull together a cyber response team that includes both Homeland Security and my office in terms of dealing with the response.
So for our organization, we have a Cybersecurity Operations Center that would likely be either the initial point of contact or the discovery point for a potential incident. We would assess as much as possible the depth of the breach before reaching out. But we would certainly contact MS-ISAC. Usually they find out about the same time we do. And if we identify that the breach involves, publicly or personally identifiable information or something of that sort, we would initiate a call to the FBI.
Okay. Thank you. And as a follow-up, Colonel Cooney and Mr. Deladucci, as individuals with emergency management roles, whom do you recommend New Yorkers or Californians call in the event of a disruption event?
Well, for us, it depends on the nature, but of course, I would say the NICIC, the Fusion Center, being co-located with the MSISAC, and then we would take it from there depending on the nature of it.
As well, if it depends on the nature, with this new integration center that we've built, this will be the central point where all information and reporting will flow into. If there's a criminal predicate associated with the intrusion, our state police that has cyber crime investigation unit will sort of take the lead and be supported by the rest of the entities that have come together in a collaborative way. But that's the process, and because the center also includes connections with DHS and FBI, they're right there with us, and then we can move on that as rapidly as possible.
Yeah. Do you all feel comfortable with knowing in particular who to call at the federal level, and who who would respond to you in the event of a cyber disruption event? I found that that's something that is unclear to many, whether it's big businesses or even government agencies, and who are you all clear on that, and who would you call? Would you like to give input?
Well, this, Mark, again, this is a question. I mean, we typically would turn to the FBI. DHS's information sharing, but the FBI would be working with us on the actual analysis of the intrusion. But the Secret Service also plays a role in it, so there's a little bit of a conflict there. But typically, our next step is to go to the FBI.
Okay.
I think your point is well taken, though, that in the private sector, I think there's less awareness of who to call. I think that you've got a panel of people who work in government and who have spent time putting together cybersecurity programs, so we, more than anybody, are going to know the right individuals to call. But I think you're correct that depending on the nature of the entity, particularly a privately held organization, I'm not sure they would know who to reach out.
I think that's why we have to work at the federal here to help get the word out more. That one of the first places to go, in addition to FBI, would also be the NCIC or U.S. CERT to request federal assistance. But Mr. Raymond, if I could, in your testimony, you mentioned that NASCIO recommends that states have a cyber disruption response plan. I know you highlighted New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and my home state of Rhode Island. And I know what we've been doing in Rhode Island, that our cyber disruption team that we've created has basically all the stakeholders at the table, emergency management people, state police. We have our colleges, universities, as well as the private sector at the table. And it's really proved very effective at bringing the stakeholders to the table to plan for a response to a cyber disruption event. Is there a way for the federal government that we can encourage this type of approach?
I believe, is it related to education and continuing to hold exercises, continuing to participate through Homeland Security in having the states describe their disruption plans? I think all of those encouragement points are very helpful in organizing states' response to incidents like that. Participation, NGA is holding a cyber policy academy for several states. Connecticut is one of those participating. That helps bring best practices across the states, and I know that DHS is a good partner in that exercise as well.
Okay. Thank you all. Yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the vice chairman of the Subcommittee on Emergency Preparedness, Response, and Communications, the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, panel, for being here and the professional testimony. Very detailed, very important to us. Mr. Raymond, I have a question here, two-part question, so I may break it up. How can the roles of information sharing organizations such as MSISAC and ISACs be more strongly defined and effectively implemented?
I'm not I know that we actively work with MSISAC, and we find that it's fairly defined. I'm not sure that I understand how more strongly.
Well, let me add a little more description. Should their responsibilities be strengthened to increase information sharing efficiency? Is that fair?
Yes, I believe the velocity of information sharing, specifically across all players, can be improved.
Okay, General Spano, what efforts does the MSISAC take to gauge customer satisfaction with the states that they are engaging with?
Sure. So we have an executive committee that's comprised of several of the representatives from the CISO's office and the security professionals.
Okay.
We have monthly calls with all the members. We have over 1,000 members, although the 56 are the ones that we actively are pursuing monitoring with. We have an annual conference that they attend. We provide newsletters, efforts. The NCSR is we manage on behalf of DHS to get their self-assessments to work. So it's a very strong and growing collaborative environment.
In your testimony, I believe you described the value add of a state being a member of the MSISAC.
Correct.
What additional services or capabilities do you see the MSISAC being able to provide if we were taking out the next 5 to 10 years?
The next 5 to 10 years, I believe that as we help solidify the basic hygiene of the security framework, such as the controls, as the foundations at the state level, and begin to help them evolve from the basics of just trying to keep their systems patched and configured correctly, I think the whole state of or posture of cybersecurity will eventually begin to increase at a much more rapid pace. That's one specific area. As technology evolves to the Internet of Things and into the cloud environment, there may be a different dimension to cybersecurity that has not yet fully matured or evolved or is understood.
Sure.
And so we have started to move out by offering those hardened images within Amazon Web Services, and we're talking to the other cloud providers like Microsoft to be able to provide the same type of hardened machine images in their cloud so that as the states begin to move toward cloud, they can do it much more securely than they are now, because there's tremendous advantages and cost savings that could help fuel resources to help in the cybersecurity area.
Well, my next question was, what kind of steps do you see there to effectively get us there? But I think you just touched on some of that. Let me take, if I could, please, going back to Mr. Raymond, what do you currently see as the greatest limitation of the state's ability to defend just against the general cyber attacks? Can you speak to that for a second? Talk about the problems there.
I think there's different states are organized very differently, right? We are a critical infrastructure provider from state data centers to state networks. I think if we look at the sort of complexity of the business that we serve, from schools, libraries, in some instances hospitals, so the diversity of the population that we that we serve, and the sort of discrete nature of how funding comes in doesn't allow us to leverage things as broadly as we would like. So I'd say that's one of the primary challenges.
Okay. Can I open that up to anybody else on the panel? I've got 50-something seconds. So if anybody else want to touch on the state's sort of the obstacles there?
Well, I think one of the bigger challenges that they have that makes implementing cybersecurity tougher is a more strategic problem in how software and applications are developed.
Okay.
So many of the software products are coming out of the box with inherent vulnerabilities, and I think they're poorly crafted and require a lot of lift to continue to sustain it. That's not going to be solved in any sweeping legislation, but it has to be addressed because the competitive nature of providing software and services and applications to get the speed and agility that you need to compete means you're getting beta versions and you're a little bit sloppier in the production.
Right.
And the applications that you're building, even internally, to do specific things are oftentimes poorly crafted and have security vulnerabilities that tax your cyber professionals.
My time has expired. Mr. Ghilarducci, you looked like you were in agreement there. Did you need to add anything to that?
I would just say that, cyber, what I call low-hanging fruit, just cyber hygiene training across the board can go a long way in making sure that state employees and state networks are as robust against attacks. Well, that's one of the things that there's really not a lot of consistent and standardized training that's really made available, and I think that more of that would help a great deal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from New Jersey, Ms. Watson Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Galvin, frequently the first person to decide what to do in response to a cyber incident is not the CEO or even senior leadership. It is the operational personnel level, and often physical security professionals who are vastly more comfortable protecting against physical threats than threats to a network. My question is, what are the most important relationships emergency responders should maintain with private sector employees at all organizational levels?
That's a very good question, Congresswoman. Thank you for it. I think your observation is entirely accurate, that the person who is sitting at the facility overseeing operations is the person who's going to see the symptoms or the effects of a cyber attack first and foremost. And I think there are several important relationships. One, within any organization, there has to be training to make sure that the person who is operating the facility is aware of what they should do in order to pick up the phone and contact, in our case, our help desk or our CSOC, Cybersecurity Operations Center. And then from there, it goes from a technical professional who is going to field the call and take a look at the nature of the threat and make a determination as to whether this is an opportunistic thing that is just a latent incident that has been there active for a while versus something that is emergent. And then that person escalates it internally in our organization, and I would suspect that a lot of organizations are similar. There's a kind of a tiered operation that goes on. It goes to a second or a third level person in order to investigate and follow up further on. So I think the relationships are first and foremost between the operations personnel and the technical personnel. And then secondly is the escalation in the partnerships that happen within an organization, as well as awareness as to where to escalate it further if the threat cannot be contained.
Thank you. This is a question I'd like to start with you, Mr. Galvin, and then kind of move on down as quickly as we possibly can. And this has to do with sort of, just imagine a cyber Katrina. So our question is, if we fail to develop, implement, and train on doctrine to respond to a cyber event with physical or collateral consequences because it is something we have not seen before, then we will be inventing the wheel as we try to drive the car when we have these attacks. So my question is, from your perspective, what is the most important action the federal government can take to ensure that the communities can effectively respond to a cyber event of this nature?
Again, I think it relates to the readiness and the preparedness. We haven't really talked about this yet, but one of the things that keeps me awake at night, and I'm sure it keeps a lot of CIOs awake, is industrial control systems or operational technology. So we've talked a little bit about IT systems and the fact that there's patching required. We're used to that as technology professionals. Oh, there's a fix that came out. Microsoft has Patch Tuesday, and it's turned into Cyber Threat Wednesday, right? Because they release the vulnerability, people know about it, and they try to leverage it. But there is no analog to the operational technology world, the things that control lighting systems or fire alarm systems or ventilation systems or things of that nature, and those pose a real threat for us. So, I'm sorry, I'm getting lost in your question. But
what do you see the federal government?
Yeah, so again, I think it has to do with the preparedness, making sure that the plans are in place to respond and that there's coordination between organizations, not just within a single organization.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to respond to this question? Mr. Raymond?
Thank you. I think continuing to sponsor and participate in exercises that allow the states to demonstrate their preparedness as Internet of Things continues to grow, unmanned vehicle systems, all of that will continue to get more complex. So being an important sponsor to allow us to play and work through these exercises in advance and think through them helps us really prepare for real events when they do occur.
Thank you. Thank you. One quick question, since we can't go down there. On a scale of 1 to 10 being the very best, how well are we doing incorporating risk to into emergency response plans and developing contingency operations? And I should just probably give that to you, Mr. Gallarducci. Did I slay that name?
You did great. Thanks. Well, I appreciate the question, Congresswoman. It really, we don't need to reinvent the wheel with regards to all hazard planning. I mean, we have a national construct, the National Incident Management System, and having those capabilities in place to respond to the consequences, the cascading consequences of a cyber attack should be reinforced and exercised and built upon. The delta or the challenge is that the traditional systems that we depend upon for communications and situational awareness may be actually impacted by a cyber attack. So we need to make sure we have continuity of operations, redundancies put in place. This is an area where the federal government can support states, and you want to leverage that public-private capability so that you're utilizing the most information you can get to be able to make the right decisions. So in your training and in your focus, you need to also plan for, don't just always plan for the technology is going to be operational. Start to do exercises and plans where you lose all that. How are you going to continue to communicate? How are you going to continue to get resources and get situational awareness in a timely way to make sure you protect lives and property? So those are some of the things, but it has to start with the construct of that all hazards environment and our NIMS construct.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I yield back my time, even though I'm over it.
The gentlewoman yields back the time that she doesn't have. We have a few more moments, and our panel traveled so far. I'd just like to offer a second round of quick questions for my colleagues, and I'd just like to start with, we spoke about your challenges, and each of you told us about the challenge of lack of resources, competing, the competition for talent with industry, the inability to share information because of its classifications. Would each of you just share with us what you think your biggest achievement is, or your biggest success, without divulging trade secrets to our enemies, that maybe some of your colleagues would be able to piggyback on and use in their various environments?
I'll start. I guess 2 areas, and again, it continues to evolve for us. And we're working hard at it, but that is the establishment of a public-private, non-governmental, academic cybersecurity task force to be able to share information and best practices and recommendations and ideas to help us as a state drive those ideas forward, and the establishment of this integrated cybersecurity fusion center, if you would, that co-locates with our primary fusion center and our critical infrastructure protection team. They can come together and all be looking at similar threat streams together with an effort to be able to mitigate prior to the event actually having the greatest impact. So I think those are 2 areas, and then spin-offs from those is working with K through 12 and community colleges. We've actually implemented a cyber warrior program in California that has become just taken off. I hate to use the word like wildfire because we have a lot of those, but has really taken off in California. And the cyber warrior program for high school students and community college students has really been well received, and that's really we're trying to make that cyber warrior workforce.
Thank you, sir. Lieutenant Colonel?
I think it would be the establishment of our cyber analysis unit at our fusion center. I think we were fortunate to find the right people and the right mix between technical capability and the ability to do intelligence analysis. It's worked well for us in an area that, as I mentioned in my testimony, that when it comes to cyber intrusions and the intel up front in the prevention realm, this is still relatively new for us. We got into it in about 2014, and so far we've made some good progress. So I would say, if other states could, emulate that, then they may find that beneficial.
Thank you, sir. General?
Yeah, I would say that the success of the ISAC in terms of showing how public and private can come together to address an issue of such national importance. And within the ISAC, I probably would highlight our CERT function, which is probably one of the best, certainly in the nation. I think I'd like to say that it's probably a world recognized in terms of its ability to conduct forensics and analysis for a plethora of customers, predominantly, of course, focused at the SLTT.
Thank you, General. Mr. Raymond?
Thank you. One of the things that I think we're really proud of in Connecticut is that we've been sort of baking telecommunications and networking into our incident response teams. So we've had several weather events over the past few years, and through that, it's become really critical that citizens rely on communication technology much more so than they ever had before. So we do have a response team associated with restoring commercial networks and communication structures, and having those relationships at the ready has allowed us to respond very quickly when Superstorm Sandy came, and to be able to restore communications as much as possible.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Galvin?
Thank you. And at the Port Authority, the technology, the policies, the procedures, and the personnel that we've put in place, we've been able to detect and automatically block 90% of the critical incidences that we can see on our network. And we've been able to reduce our critical incident response time by 2/3 in the past year. So we're proud of these things, but there's a lot of work that remains to protect our critical technology assets. And as many people on the panel have already talked about, and I won't repeat, the threat continues to evolve, and the attack surface continues to expand with mobile devices and the emerging Internet of Things. So we're confident, but we're continuing to work diligently.
Thank you, sir. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Galvin, in your testimony, you note that the Port Authority has undertaken an effort to better understand cyber vulnerabilities and address them. What is the biggest challenge in carrying out this task, and what has the Port Authority learned in the process that might help other ports or critical infrastructure owners conduct a similar assessment?
I think thank you very much. So I think the size of the task is enormous. We have approximately 690 applications to assess, and I think the lesson that I would give to other organizations is to start now. It doesn't decrease in effort or size as time goes on, because there are new techniques, new technologies that every day get introduced into your organization, whether or not you're aware of them, and they do require an assessment. It's a huge effort, and the limiting factor, I think, is just is the size of the staff and the ability of our organization to absorb what we learn.
Thank you. And Mr. Gallarducci, you've observed that risk assessments used by some states do not adequately address the top cyber threats or systematic interdependencies. How can we help states better assess their cyber vulnerabilities? Should FEMA be improving the DERA guidance, or should the federal government be providing separate guidance on how to conduct cyber assessments more thoroughly?
Well, the guidance that, really the standards for assessments that we're using really are the NIST standards, and I think that we would all agree that a little bit more meat could be put on the bones around doing assessments that are a little bit more, that speak a little bit more to the various aspects of the emergency management or public safety spectrum. I know we're looking at networks, but when you look at the network's vulnerabilities, we also need to think about what would in the long term, what would be the consequences should we lose certain networks, and sort of play that out a little bit longer way. So FEMA would be a good entity to be able to provide some additional guidance there. The other thing is DHS, through their protective service analysts that work with our critical infrastructure protection folks, they do provide some additional support, and we appreciate that. But we probably need to get some area associated with the cyber networks, particularly when looking at private sector, given that most of the private sector is owned, or most of the infrastructure is owned by the private sector. We need to continue to work to link those together with regards to the assessment process, because sometimes information sharing is a little bit challenging because of proprietary and competitive kind of issues, but we need to find a place that we continue to share information to strengthen our capability as much as possible.
You also talked about states playing catch-up in developing a whole of the government approach to cybersecurity, and noted that even in California, only 13 organizations have participated in the cyber hygiene partnership. What do you think, why do you think more agencies within the state are not participating, and what can the federal government do to encourage improved buy-in for cybersecurity efforts among the state and local agencies, or even the private sector?
Well, I think maybe Mr. Raymond and others may be a little bit more to talk about the challenges of state government. I know for us, it's been, I think, one, framing and understanding of the threat. It means different things to different people. And we need to be more outgoing, external with regards to, like we do with a lot of other preparedness programs, and this is where the federal government, through cyber hygiene initiatives and other kinds of training opportunities, to build that knowledge base as to what it means to sit at a device or get onto the internet, and what kind of challenges you could be faced with regards to threats. So training and education is one thing. The second piece is, I think because there's a lack of knowledge, particularly at the executive level, in making decisions on funding allocations for doing assessments, quite a few times, it's, because you don't understand it, it's not made as a priority as it should be. And let's face it, we as a collective country, and it's just across the board, are behind the power curve with regards to this threat. We are all working very hard collectively, but we do need to do more to step this up. Can't just say it's a priority. We need to put resources behind it to really and truly make it a priority. And just like we've done at other kinds of threats, whether it's natural or human-caused threats, we throw a lot of resources at that to make sure that we are in front of it and are effectively all knowledgeable about it.
The gentleman yields. The chair recognizes the gentleman for Rhode Island, Mr. Langevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to go back to something we had talked about in terms of knowing who to call. And Mr. Ghilarducci, maybe I have a question for you. I just wanted to follow up with the point that Mr. Galvin had made about the private sector knowing who to call. And so just so I understand, so if PG&E has a cyber incident, do you recommend that they contact you or DOE or DHS first? And are you concerned about losing visibility if critical infrastructure providers go federal first?
Well, this is where we're trying to, we're actually, we have the California Emergency Utilities Association. It's an entity that's funded and supported by all of the major utilities in California, embedding into our Cyber Integration Center. It gives them that one sort of belly button, so to speak, to be able to make the call and open up the, all of the contacts in a one call sort of format. It is challenging, I think, for them now because they do have a lot of people that they need to be reporting to, and inadvertently what happens is that some entity that needs to know what's going on falls through those cracks. The other thing is that historically, there hasn't been a lot of desire, I guess, so to speak, to let too many people know what's going on because of demonstrating vulnerabilities that an organization may have. So by utilizing authorities and procedures that are being put in place through this integrated approach, it gives the utilities and the health industry, similar kind of thing, a single belly button to make the call. We're all looking at it at the same time, and all of the required notifications can be made at one point.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that the point about being reluctant to share, by the way, we've got to work at getting over that, because obviously if one is vulnerable, everybody's vulnerable, and that's what hopefully information sharing will help to mitigate. You know, we've been talking a lot about assets this morning, rather assessments this morning, but equally important is not only knowing the vulnerabilities that may exist in your assets, but in your systems, but also knowing the value of the data that you're holding. So for Mr. Spano, Mr. Raymond, in Rhode Island, where I'm from, our Governor Raimondo, set up a cybersecurity commission to examine the state's cyber posture, and one of the biggest initial findings had to do with managers not understanding the value of the data or systems and their vulnerability to attack. Incidentally, this is the same problem that the federal government faced with the OPM attack, knowing that the systems were vulnerable, but also not understanding the value, really, of the data that they were responsible for protecting. In your experience, how well do state agencies, particularly those that aren't focused on IT, understand their exposure and also the value of their data?
The value question is hard to quantify, other than to say that the question of the scope and standards of protection has been one that has been discussed and debated since sort of the evolution of the internet into the challenges that we're facing today. What do I protect, and how much protection is enough? We've got the full classification of systems, so I think there's a clear understanding of secret, top secret. It's within that unclassified regime of understanding personal identifiable information, HIPAA information, and I think by and large there is a rudimentary understanding at the sort of the basic masses of employees that deal in those environments and with that information. There are isolated and pockets of excellence where managers are being trained on how to deal with HIPAA and identify PII, but by and large, it's a challenge with educating, you know, your existing workforces against the basic cyber threats and the basic protections that they can do, as well as sort of the identification of what that value is of information.
Great, thank you. Mr. Raymond?
I think that the state's response has been my experience that there's sort of two buckets, right? That one is for those that have regulated data, whether it's HIPAA, protected medical information, FERPA data, IRS, those organizations are very much aware of the value of the information that they have. I think that for those that have non-regulated data, but that may be important to protect, I think that the reliability of, or the awareness of what they have and the importance to protect it may be a little bit less. I know in Connecticut we have a data classification policy that makes you look at what data you have and how valuable it is in terms of treating it for data sharing or at least protecting. And I think having that kind of approach for all states can really raise that visibility level that you described.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are you back?
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee.
Let me thank the chair for his courtesies, and let me acknowledge the chair and the ranking member sitting wearing many hats, Mr. Payne, to the full committee chair and the full committee ranking member. We have overlapping committees, and I just came out of the Judiciary Committee, so I thank you for your courtesies. This is a very important hearing, which is one of the reasons I did the Mad Dash, because I chaired this committee when it was the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, which included all of the nation's technological network. I remember visiting water and sewer plants and seeing the openness and the expanse and wondering what potential terrorist act or manipulation of the technology dealing with it. I just came back from Silicon Valley, and they're pleading for individuals who can code or to write code. So I want to offer to you some thoughts. Obviously, you've not looked at it, but I have a bill, H.R. 53, Cybersecurity Education and Federal Workforce Enhancement, which is to target in and focus in on building up the workforce for the federal government dealing with technology. Also, H.R. 60, one is H.R. 53 dealing with education, H.R. 60, the National Guard Act to develop a civilian force that can be activated in the event of a major cyber attack or event. Now, if we were domestic, we know that we have Northcom that would rise up and be part of dealing with any attack to the United States in a very massive way. I've pushed Northcom to be engaged on state and local, but this is technology. This is a cyber attack. So if you can answer the question, the importance of building the workforce, and as well the importance of having well-experienced individuals for a massive attack that deals with infrastructure such as water and sewer, such as our electrical grid, and the one that I live with every day, the petrochemical industry, which is highly automated at each stage of the process through energy extraction, transportation, processing, and distribution. As you well know, that's an arm of the federal government, or the movement of the economy in this nation. So if you could answer those, I would appreciate it, and I'll listen to you. Thank you. Is there someone wants to take? Thank you.
I think education and workforce are incredibly important for us being able to respond. I'll just add one comment specifically around the Guard and Guard response. I think that as it relates to us being able to have and retain workforce, because many of these folks are highly trained individuals and they can gain higher salaries in the private sector, having that capability of applying that in the event that happens at a state level is important. We do work very closely. We have a monthly cyber meeting where members of the Guard participate in that for awareness capabilities. And so it is one sort of creative way for the states to be able to utilize that capability and bring those skills to bear.
Thank you.
I'd like to comment as well, if I can.
Thank you. Appreciate
I
it.
think there are several different skills that are involved in doing incident response in cybersecurity. Not all of them require coding skills. I think the ability to think creatively, to think on your feet, to stay calm under pressure, I think those are all important skills that don't necessarily require coders. On the other side, after an incident is detected and you're trying to figure out how to protect yourself in the future from similar attacks, because the nature of cybersecurity events is you have something that's novel and that's unique, and then you have multiple copies of it replicated with slight variations. So if you can protect yourself against one, you can kind of replicate the protection going forward. That's where you need a coder, a skill, somebody who can take apart the threat, or at least work with someone who can take it apart, because these are getting increasingly more complex as time goes on. I think the other thing that you brought up was having a well of individuals to respond in the event of an attack on the grid or water systems or other such critical infrastructure is extremely important. And frankly, I think you have to talk to the operations people who oversee the facilities to talk about what kind of staff those people are. If it's an attack on the grid, they're not IT people, because we don't function when there's no electricity. So the question is really back to your response plan. And back in the day when a lot of us did initial kind of major systems implementations, there was always a plan, like what happens if we're not going to go live and we have to go back to the old system. That was an old product that was dusted off. So we have to go back and start looking at having those kinds of plans in place. Like if the payroll system goes down, you go back to writing checks and doing things like that. So we need to start thinking about that in the face of these kinds of very, very major attacks on electrical infrastructure, for example.
Let me pursue, if I could. Thank you for that. I think it's important to emphasize calmness, creativity, and thinking on your feet. But this whole concept of code, what I gleaned from Silicon Valley, they're looking at from one perspective, we don't have enough individuals nationwide. And maybe you would comment, I want to be able to see a far reach to be able to have those that can take apart a threat, which I believe that we are susceptible to. So anyone want to comment on building that coding and coders body of infrastructure in the human resource?
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit earlier in terms of sort of the urgency or sort of the burning platform of it's a challenge to look at this problem as we have in other challenges where capacity could solve it. The challenges we face in cyber are challenges of complexity, and capacity can't solve a complexity issue, so we have to think about it in a much different way. And the workforce is not a simple fix of just going out and trying to figure out how you're going to compete with the availability. It's how do you produce a pipeline where there's zero unemployment? And that starts back through K through 12 and STEM and getting much more interest in those areas at a much younger age, encouraging colleges and universities to develop more curriculum and more degrees. It's tied to loan forgiveness and scholarship for service beyond that to encourage them, to move into those areas. And so it has to be comprehensive and looked at across a broader spectrum of time.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for the question. I think it's a good one. I agree with everything that's been said. But I think it's important that we sort of understand, kind of talking about pre-event and post-event. And really the pre-event is where you need that workforce multiplier, those folks that are the coders, the folks that are going to interdict and mitigate prior to the event actually taking place. The consequences of power outages or a dam release or something where there's infrastructure impact, our systems that are in place currently for consequence management need to be leveraged, and those are the ones that are going to be responding to the consequences. Unless there's an ongoing series of cyber attacks, the attack itself may be done once, and then you've got now a resulting series of consequences that you have to deal with. The key thing, I think, is really in the pre-event phase is trying to have that workforce. And you mentioned the National Guard, and I think the National Guard across the states is a model, a good model that can be utilized for building real-time capabilities where, in the case of California, there are a lot of people that work in the Silicon Valley, actually, and that are, or in the IT industry, that are also guardsmen and women, and they have they bring them in on state active duty and be able to work on the cyber topic. But they give you a workforce multiplier that you can continue to build upon. But that is not mutually exclusive to the need, as the general was saying, in building out workforce from the high school level moving forward. So I think that it's important that we think about it from the standpoint of what do we have to prevent, interdict, and mitigate to minimize the impact. And then our consequence managers, the people who are going to respond, we need to train them with understanding that unlike a wildfire or an earthquake, there could, you may be operating in an environment with no IT, no situational awareness through the computer network, and you may have to go back to pen and paper to be able to get the job done. And those are the things that I think are important to understand.
Well, I want to thank the chairman for his indulgence, and if I can just, as I close, I would cite the petrochemical industry as one that argues for all that you've said. Anybody just want to comment on that? Just because these industries are dealing not only with technology, but they're dealing with chemicals. It's just a combination that you need this holistic viewpoint.
I think that's shared across finance, healthcare, electricity, and other critical infrastructures equally as well. Some are at varying levels of maturity in their thought, strategy, and execution.
Well, let me say that I could listen to the experts that are here quite more extensively, but let me say that I am hoping to move these bills and also reviewing something called coin technology. May not have heard of it or may have heard of it. That's supposed to be dealing with the bigger picture that you all are looking at. And being on this committee for so long, I will just say that when we started, we knew that 80% of the infrastructure, which includes all that you're speaking about, was in the private sector. That's right. It may have gone up now, maybe 85%. So we know what our work is, and we know what our work is going forward, and this is a very important hearing for collaboration between government and the private sector. Yes. I thank you to the chairman and ranking member. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. I thank the witnesses for their valuable testimony and the members for their questions. The members of the subcommittees may have some additional questions for the witnesses, and we will ask you to respond to these in writing. Pursuant to the committee rule 7E, the hearing record will be held open for 10 days. Without objection, the subcommittees stand adjourned. Don, thank you.